it anymore. They've sold it.
In this case, they do.
I understand, but I'm saying it's not limited to spaces that they own.
Now, if you thought things couldn't go any lower, this is the week Trump bragged about the size of the late golf pro Arnold Palmer's penis at a rally in Latrobe, Pennsylvania, Palmer's hometown. The golfer's daughter, Peggy, said, "We've lost our sense of outrage in this country." Her father was appalled. Her father was appalled by Trump's behavior before he died. He died. And my dad didn't like people who act like they're better than other people, or people who demean other people. So, and yet, of course, Trump still has a stranglehold on evangelical Christians.
Who are transactional at the very least. By the way, do you know that Trump supporters are playing a phony AI video that claims Tim Walz molested a gay student?
Yes, it goes on and on. And
luckily it was flagged immediately and taken down, but
even by Elon Musk. And this is the week Trump said convicted sexual predator Harvey Weinstein got schlonged, meaning he was treated unfairly.
Well, it's another penis reference.
Well, Mike Johnson, the speaker, was asked on CNN about Trump's Palmer comments, and the speaker dodged it. But to his credit, Jake Tapper said, if President Biden had gone on stage and spoke about the size of a pro golfer's penis, I think you would be on the show saying you were shocked and appalled, and you would say it is evidence of cognitive decline.
And what do you do? Sit there and smile silently?
He said, he just said, oh, he's so vigorous, he can stand there for 2 hours and just talk. At rallies, Trump also encouraged his cult to shout the S word, and they did with children around. We can't say this word on free speech TV, which many of you watch us on. So it's hard to trust it's hard to trust the polls. Just vote. There's lots of garbage polls out there. Richard Grinnell just made one up about New Mexico and made up numbers.
Well, this is also the week where General Kelly was quoted in a piece in the Atlantic magazine saying that Trump was valorizing Hitler as his great role model and saying he wanted Hitler's generals. So there will be a Bund meeting at Madison Square Garden this weekend on Sunday. Trump and all his acolytes, those of us who are opposing Trump are meeting outside Madison Square Garden at 3 p.m. on Sunday at 32nd Street and 7th Avenue to get organized to hold a demonstration out there at Madison Square Garden. The event doesn't start till 5, but we will be out showing ourselves to all the friends of Trump going into Madison Square Garden. And by the way,
I used to pay attention to who was betting on the candidates, and for a long time, Harris led the betting odds, but now foreign interests have spent $20 million betting on Trump, he's now the odds-on favorite to win under that thing. But they're going to, if he loses, they're going to lose 20 million. They don't care.
What do they care?
They don't care.
They have plenty of money. It's probably a Jared Kushner deal. He's the one who's in league with all of them.
So if you care, get out and vote.
Please.
And do what you can in the swing states to knock on doors, whatever you can do. Now's the time.
A lot of people from New York City are getting on buses and going to Pennsylvania to knock on doors since that's such an important state. And of course, you can show your colors by wearing pins or T-shirts or whatever. And you can also phone bank from anywhere and contact your friends.
Right. Other elections, and
volunteer to be a poll watcher. The polls are going to be stuffed with Trump people trying to throw a monkey wrench into it.
Other elections, the Victory Fund has endorsed 500 LGBTQ candidates for offices high and low. Go to victoryfund.org. HRC put out its congressional scorecard. All members of the House and Senate rated on LGBTQ issues. Check it out at hrc.org. J.D. Vance, by the way, scored 0.
We will link to that scorecard in our weekly show note. Go to gayusatv.org to sign up to receive that once a week show note that's packed with extras.
And we've told you about Sarah McBride of Delaware, who's hoping to be the first out trans member of the U.S. House, probably going to win, odds-on favorite. She was profiled on CBS Sunday Morning. It was a nice interview, and we will link to that in our email.
Okay.
By the way, the Cook Political Report says there are only 27 House races that are basically contested out of 435, a testimony to the gerrymandering allowed by our corrupt Supreme Court and the extreme polarization of the country.
I suspect there may be a few more than that up
27.
for grabs. I hear you, but they're still talking about flipping enough of them to have the Democrats take control of the House again. I'm looking forward to that. All right, politics adjacent. The Supreme Court, right down the street from the Capitol, will hear on December 4th oral arguments on the case of should states be able to ban medical care for trans youth. Tennessee is bringing that case.
And so for the first time, an out transgender lawyer, Chase Strangio, is going to be arguing before the 9 justices. He'll argue on behalf of 3 Tennessee minors, their parents, and a doctor challenging the law. 22 states have enacted similar bans. The Biden administration is the one that challenged the law, but the government asked to share its time with these private practices from the ACLU and Lambda and all these other people.
Yeah, the case is U.S. versus Scarametti, who is the Attorney General of Tennessee, who will be defending the law in Tennessee, which forbids care for trans youth. Our side is making an equal protection argument under the 14th Amendment.
And, there was a decade-long study published by JAMA Pediatrics that found 97% of trans youth do not regret their transitions.
There's a study of 220 trans youth who are being followed longitudinally for years. And this is a point where they have had at least 5 years experience as having transitioned. And yes, 97% report that they're fine and they're not, they may have some kinds of regrets of something about it, like they're not treated nicely, but they are not going back, as the phrase says these days. They are continuing their lives as they are and are content.
The wicked Attorney General of Texas, Ken Paxton, is suing Dr. Mei Chi Lau in Dallas area for providing gender-affirming care for 21 minors. And he says, trying to cover it up in her coding, says it violates Texas law against providing hormone treatments and puberty blockers to minors, says that though she wrote most of the prescriptions before the law took effect, that the renewals are what's getting her.
Well, and they've clearly gotten hospital records from Children's Hospital in Dallas, which is heinous in itself. These are mostly trans males being prescribed testosterone. Now, testosterone is prescribed so routinely to so many people, men and women and trans people, that it just seems insane that they're going after them on this basis.
And he is insane.
He is.
In Cupertino, California, an elementary school teacher who is non-binary was placed on leave for hanging pictures in a classroom showing males wearing skirts and having conversations on gender identity and expression. Now, this is at Dilworth Elementary School, and the district is reevaluating its policies on controversial topics. Oh, they say they're committed to inclusivity and for everybody, but a parent of a non-binary child says gender identity is an appropriate topic for a four-year-old.
Sure.
Objections to the poster featuring different kinds of families with the heading, "We are free to be," it was perfectly innocent and appropriate.
It was a spectrum of families. It was showed a variety of people in a variety of situations. And to think that you should be censoring that from children and starting a very binary restrictive conversation at any age is really inappropriate.
Okay. Rallies were held around the country to protest the banning of books. We have a picture at the iconic Fifth Avenue, New York Public Library. The rally was emceed by drag artist Sasha Velour, taking us pictures with folks afterwards.
Quite a stunning outfit.
She introduced the authors of the children's book, And Tango Makes Three, the true story of two male penguins who hatched a chick egg and raised her. This sweet story without an ounce of sex in it became one of the most, get the picture of And Tango Makes Three penguins, right? You got that somewhere? Maybe you're having a little trouble back there. Okay. But the rally, there it is. There's the book. And now let's hear from Justin Richardson and Peter Parnell, the authors, the gay couple that wrote the book for their own kids 20 years ago.
Our book was challenged some years more than any other book in America, but every time someone asked to have it removed from a public library, the answer was no. Why? Because of the actions of a brave teenager named Stephen Pico, who sued his school district almost 50 years ago, and because the Supreme Court justices who backed his claim that children have a right to read even those books that members of their school board do not like. 2 years ago, all that changed when a school board in Escambia County, Florida, voted to remove our book from every school in the county after receiving a complaint that it promoted, quote, the LGBTQ agenda using penguins. Tango was also removed from the schools of Lake County and then Nassau County, Florida. In Nassau, Tango was pulled along with 35 other books. These books included Toni Morrison's Beloved and The Bluest Eye, The Kite Runner by Khaled Hosseini, and The Hate You Give by Angie Thomas. They were taken away from students because a right-wing interest group claimed that each of these books was obscene. Today's National Day of Action is our way of joining all of us together and saying no. We refuse to let others decide for us what we and our families can read. What sort of actions can we take? Well, state laws like Florida's appalling Don't Say Gay law inspire book bans. So follow what's going on in your state legislature. Vote for representatives who share your views. Complain to those who don't. Attend school board meetings. Find out where your board members stand on literary freedom. Speak up. You have the power to persuade.
You do.
Yeah, and we have won some of these battles, and
some of these authors are suing these and getting the books back in there.
In Texas recently, a local school board or advisory council censored a book about indigenous people's history, the Wampanoag Indians on Cape Cod, and reclassified it from nonfiction to fiction. Fiction. And got a lot of bad publicity about that. And they have been forced to, was it a court or the Department of Education? Someone forced them to reclassify it as nonfiction. You can fight back.
And, you know, the public library is on our side. And the rally also heard from Anthony Marks, president of the library, who told me how the library is fighting back against book banning.
Can you just tell us, if a book is banned where these kids are from, how can the New York Public Library help them access it? How can they access it?
So we're providing books that have been banned electronically, online for free to people around the country. And we're having author talks so that kids can gather and talk to each other and talk to the authors. We're the biggest library system in the country, if not the world. We have to stand up and share this burden. We're not suffering the bans ourselves, but that can't be an excuse for standing by idly while this is happening.
So people go to nypl.org?
Yep.
That's it. And by the way,
And there have been attacks in New York City.
Sister Janine Gramick, you've been doing this work with
just a little
okay
blip, yes.
And by the way, if you're in New York for the holidays or something like that, or you live here, Go to the New York Public Library. On the first floor, they have something called Treasures, which has all kinds of wonderful artifacts, including a ton of gay stuff all over the place. And you can bring your children in, no matter what age they are. Great thing on James Baldwin in there right now.
There are ACT UP archives at the New York Public
Yes.
Library. I don't know how accessible they are, but they're there.
Elements of that do
Yeah.
appear of activists,
Yeah.
gay and AIDS activists
All
as
right,
well.
now we're going to take a big turn to ugly stuff. And that is the ex-CEO of Abercrombie and Fitch, which you may remember years ago was famous for its very provocative models. Yeah, go ahead, Andy.
all
do
the
that.
beefy guys and the shirtless guys, yes.
Well, ex-CEO Michael Jeffries, now 80 years old, and his partner Matthew Smith, 61,
There on the left.
have been charged with sex trafficking.
This followed a BBC investigation into them and a class action lawsuit accusing Jeffries of using the prospect of modeling jobs to lure young men to events around the world where they would sexually exploited.
Yeah, you may think, oh, okay, so they brought people in who wanted to be models, big deal. But they were forcibly detained. They were coerced into sex with drugs, etc. They were, fraud, coercion, force. A third guy was indicted, James Jacobson, now 71, who served as a recruiter for them. He would pay men for sex and then would tell them they could get modeling jobs and would be paid. And he would entice them and send them all over the world to various parties and events. And they would be sexually assaulted.
It's very similar to the Sean Diddy Combs case, which went on for decades, now including a woman who says he, Diddy, and a male and female celebrity couple raped her when she was 13 in 2000. 11 other suits were brought this past week, men and women bringing suits. He spiked their drinks. He faces life behind bars for sex trafficking girls and boys. And by the way, he's been taken off a lot of radio playlists, but online, there's
very
a surge.
popular.
There's a surge in people listening to his
Well, that
music.
always happens. People are interested, so they pursue it.
Okay.
In Pennsylvania, Darnice Raines has been convicted of the 2021 murder of trans woman Angel Nehra. There's Angel.
That's Angel, yes.
Yeah. It took them a while to convict Darnice,
They
but
got DNA evidence, brutally killed. The community is crying for stepped-up efforts to address the roots of anti-trans violence. It might start with the Republican Party.
And in South Carolina, Daquay Lamique Ritter has been given a life sentence for the murder of Dime Doe, a trans woman,
24.
in 2019. He was having a relationship with her, which he did not want his girlfriend to find out about. So he killed her.
Well, this is the first time that Ritter's conviction was the first for violent acts committed against a transgender person under the Matthew Shepard James Byrd Jr. Federal Hate Crimes Prevention Act of 2009.
All right.
By the way, Doe's mom spoke at the hearing and says every day is a struggle without her.
In Honolulu, Hawaii, the government of Honolulu has agreed to pay $670,000 to the owners of the Scarlet Honolulu gay bar, which accused them of discrimination, and also the Gay Island Guide. The bar owner
sounded awful.
The gay bar owner cried on the stand talking about the way they were treated. A lifetime of hate he's suffered and harassment. And the bar was just relentlessly attacked.
Liquor authorities in New York used to go after lesbian bars. They closed 2 of them in the 80s, said, oh, you're not serving men. And they would serve men, but they would just say to you, you might be happier down the street at McSorley's.
Yes.
But that was enough to get them closed. by the bigots in those positions.
Exactly. The city council has to okay this settlement for $670,000. And in California, the Los Angeles Diocese, Archdiocese, Archdiocese is going to pay $880 million for sexual abuse of minors by priests.
Yeah.
And they've paid previous settlements, and I think it now totals $1.5 billion just for the LA Archdiocese.
I'm not going to repeat the joke they made on Saturday Night Live about that. Also, back in New York, we told you how the New York Liberty star Breonna Stewart and her wife, Marta Zargay Casademont, were subjected to threatening and homophobic email.
Yep.
But the Liberty, as you probably have heard, went on to win the WNBA championship for the first time in an overtime final with the Minnesota Lynx. They're going to get a
controversial.
Yes, about a call.
Yeah,
but they're going to have a ticker tape parade in New York on
tomorrow as
Thursday,
we're taping. We're taping Wednesday. The ticker tape parade is Thursday for anyone who sees this before then.
Downtown.
All right. International news.
Well, the far-right government of Italian Prime Minister Giorgia Meloni they'd already banned surrogacy in Italy. Now they've criminalized the seeking of surrogacy abroad, which is a big setback for gay couples who had turned to the United States for surrogacy. Violations can bring prison sentences and substantial fines. It was so, and the other thing is the health minister wants cases of surrogate motherhood reported to them, but the heads of the medical association say no way.
Yeah, doctors are refusing, but this is terrible. And it's going to affect straight couples too, but it's harder for them to be detected using surrogates, and they're not going to be targeted in the same way and examined as closely as gay couples, especially gay men.
Right.
So,
all right, terrible story.
This is Maloney, by the way, who is being talked about as moving to the center. This is the way for her to keep her bona fides with the right wing.
Beating up on gays.
Yes. 'Twas ever thus.
Terrible story out of Finland. The country's first out gay pro hockey player, Janne Puhaka, 29, was shot to death. We have that's him on the left. Shot to death by his ex-partner there on the right, Ralph Nordmo, 66, after they broke up. Now, Puhaka had maintained contact with Nordmo, but when they met up to sort of, tie up loose ends and maybe split the property or something like that, Nordmo grabs a shotgun and kills him.
Terrible.
Charged with murder. They'd been dating since 2014, and Puhaka opened up about his sexuality after his retirement, actually, in 2018.
He also appeared on the Finnish version of Traitors. Who knew Finland had a
But there were moments of silence for him observed by the Finnish teams that he had starred on.
Yeah, Nordmo is a veterinarian in Norway.
Right. So this week, Dignity, I was actually a member of Dignity back in the early 80s. Or late 70s. And I went back for their 52nd anniversary.
Gay Catholics.
Because, yes, gay Catholics. Sister Janine Gramick was getting their award. We have a picture of her getting the award from Jeff Stone there. And she's been working for inclusion in the Catholic Church for a long time. And I asked her about the kind of progress that we're making in the Catholic Church. So, Sister Janine Gramick, you've been doing this work within the Catholic Church for 50 years. You've had your ups and downs. You've been persecuted. You've been praised. And recently you've established a letter-writing relationship, pen pal relationship with the Pope, and been meeting with him, and you just met with him again. Yeah. So where on the arc of things are we in the Catholic Church on these issues?
Well, I think we've made great progress really since Pope Francis was elected. And that's because I think he wants to get us back to the purpose of the Second Vatican Council, which was the church in the modern world. We have to embrace the modern world. And that's what Pope Francis is trying to do. And in terms of the LGBTQ community, he is embracing the Catholic, the LGBTQ community. And so it's remarkable. But it takes people who have that kind of vision, and that not only that kind of vision, but that kind of compassion and understanding and walking in the footsteps of the Lord. That's what I think it is.
Right. But the recent synod, did not take up LGBTQ and women's issues, basically.
That's right.
So how did you feel about that?
Well, from my perspective, of course, I was disappointed, and yet we have to understand what synodality means. Synodality doesn't mean pushing your issue, and although I do it, I push my issue. But synodality means sitting down and listening to people who disagree with you, and then having hopefully respectfully, and having them respectfully then listen to you and your story. So what Pope Francis is trying to do is to have people communicate, and in that communication of people who disagree, that we can find areas of agreement. But it takes a long time. If you're a student of history, you know that things don't change overnight. They don't even change in a century. And here we are, barely 50 years after the council, and things are changing. So this is remarkable.
And it was interesting. After that,
you've had this correspondence.
After that, she talked about how national churches are going their own way. We knew about the German church, which is becoming pretty pro-gay. But she said the Italian bishops are now more on our side, which I was surprised to hear. And, that is a way forward. I mean, because the church in the developing world is very conservative.
Yes, and you pursued this conversation with her.
Yes, we have more from Sister Janine.
And you've had this correspondence with the Pope.
Yeah.
What's the most encouraging thing that he said to you, if you can reveal that?
Well, the most encouraging thing, probably that in this last visit that I had with him, that he said, we have a number of bishops, number of dioceses in the United States whose bishops are of retirement age, and is going to have to replace the bishops. And he said he is looking at and asking them what is their position on trans issues, so that they'd be very compassionate and understanding and accepting. And if they're not, I guess they don't get the job.
That's news.
It is. I'm skeptical and cynical about a lot of this, but I guess progress is an inch at a time.
Well, he's trying to populate the group of cardinals who will elect his successor with people who are, more centrist. They're never liberal, really, other than on economic issues and things. And Cardinal Dolan is up. He has to retire at 75. I mean, he doesn't have to retire, but the Pope can accept it when he's 75. He has to offer his, and that would be a really great thing, to get that position filled with somebody much better.
Yes. Well, an inch of progress in Poland, which for years has been governed by very right-wing politicians who were setting up, gay-free zones. But an election brought in a more liberal government, and now the government is proposing a civil unions scheme for everybody. It leaves out adoption rights because that's the way they make a compromise with the right wing.
Happened all over Europe when they did civil partnerships.
Yeah.
They often lagged on adoptions.
But it is a little surreal to think of Poland legalizing civil unions.
AIDS news?
Just one more note from the UK. The England and Wales Cricket Board has banned trans women from the elite women's cricket circuit.
That doesn't sound very cricket.
Well, They call it a balance of fairness, safety, and inclusion. Whatever.
All right, AIDS news. Public health officials are seeing a surge in syphilis cases, congenital syphilis cases, from 334 in 2012 to 3,761 in 2022. I mean, syphilis in general has surged to 200,000 nationwide, and that's way up, even in a year.
But it is mostly mothers transmitting to babies.
Yes. There's been in New York City, there's been a 35% increase among women in 1 year. Little change among men, but anyway, get tested and treated.
A couple of new things from the Biden administration, one of which is that they are requiring private insurance companies to cover PrEP, pre-exposure prophylaxis against HIV. They want to make it more widely available, encourage more people to make use of it. It is slowly gaining in popularity, but not enough. And so they're trying to jack that up.
And it's going to cover a lot of kinds of contraception. And so it's another reason for working against the election of Trump, who will use they are citing the Comstock Act they're trying to ban the abortion pill again.
Yes,
and literally citing the 19th century Comstock Act. You can't do this. By the way, if the Comstock Act is upheld by the Supreme Court, that's the end of this show. I mean, we're transmitting stuff which is forbidden under the Comstock Act.
If only. I went to the TAG Awards last week, Treatment Action Group. This is an organization, a nonprofit that came out of ACT UP, the people working on developing treatments and cures. And every year they hold a cocktail party, treatment research in action awards. They promote research.
I was there when they honored Ann Northrop.
It's true. So this is a couple of years later. It was really, really good this year. They had some great honorees and speeches. They honored Tom Viola, who's going to be here with us for a sort of exit interview from Broadway Cares.
Along with our associate producer, Bill Ballman, who has been an activist since the early 70s.
But is not exiting. And
we hope not.
Our friend Joe McConnell, who's been at TAG for a long time. Cynthia Carr, the great author and activist, and a couple of others. But there was a lot of really informative speech making about the where we stand in terms of research and the work that's going on. And I was sitting with people who were listening. We were all listening very intently, which is not usual at these things. And it turned to me afterwards and said, wow, I had no idea that they were doing so much that's so important. So congratulations to TAG for putting on a really important event this year.
Another abortion story. A 13-year-old girl got pregnant in Idaho and was denied emergency room treatment under a state law requiring parental consent for all minors' health care. She'd been brought to the hospital by her great aunt. That's not good enough. 2 hours were spent trying to contact her mother, who lives in a car, and her grandmother, who was her legal guardian. The grandma finally gave consent for the pelvic exam from the Boise area jail, where she was incarcerated on drug charges. The law was passed to prevent teens from discussing birth control and gender identity issues with doctors and counselors without parental consent. And it was pushed by the Christian right.
How old was this girl?
13. And the right-wing states, And by the way, the New York State Equal Rights Amendment on the ballot, Proposition 1, protecting LGBTQ rights, women's rights. Here's how nationality and reproductive rights. It's now polling at 69% in favor. A poll this week, which, because the right wing has a great campaign, not a great campaign, but a big campaign fighting it. It says it will destroy girls' sports, as if they care. But the new one they're using is, by protecting nationality, you're protecting illegal aliens. They're saying this. It's absurd. All these things are already covered in New York law. We're just trying to codify it. It's all lies. It's all they've got.
I think in a few years, if the right wing keeps up this kind of approach, they'll just disappear completely. Whatever. All right. more entertaining news?
I want to hear about Hannah Gadsby.
Well, I'm a fan of Hannah Gadsby ever
Me too.
since Nanette broke through. Now, I went to see Hannah Gadsby with our pal Marin Johns,
Who will be here
next week.
Yeah.
She was going to be here a couple of weeks ago, but I switched dates with her. So Marin will be here next week. But you got to take an Australian too, or she took me actually with her tickets, an Australian to see Hannah Gadsby. And she told me about how Hannah really had kicked around like local bars all over Australia for years before she finally hit the big time, which was interesting to hear about. But Hannah did hit the big time with Nanette, her stand-up show a few years ago.
Went to Netflix.
Yeah, yes, Netflix. And then Douglas about her dog. And Nanette was about sexual.
It wasn't about Nanette.
No, it was not. She is, Donald Trump thinks he weaves stories. Hannah Gadsby weaves thoughts and stories. And this new one is called Woof. No one ever figured out what Woof was about, but I think it was sort of like, oof, I don't know. It's more about whales than a dog, but it's playing just through the next few days here in New York through October 27th at the Abram Arts Center on the Lower East Side.
Well, we expect it to eventually be picked up and shown on Netflix, don't we?
One would hope so. Yes, her other shows have. So I am still a big fan of Hannah Gadsby and think that she is worth listening to.
So I saw Our Town, the classic American play by Thornton Wilder, who was gay, now has an out gay stage manager, Jim Parsons, and it has a great cast. Now there you're seeing in the center there Richard Thomas with the
John Boy.
Yeah, John Boy. He plays the dad. Well, Richard Thomas and Katie Holmes play a group of parents. Billy Eugene Jones, Michelle Wilson are the parents of the Ephraim Sykes there. So anyway, what do I want to say? It's and it also includes our pal, put her up again there, Julie Halston, who plays one of the townspeople. This is Grover. So it's Grover Corners, New Hampshire in 1901 and in and around there. But there are a lot of modern touches, kind of bells and whistles and things that I thought were a little distracting. Directed by Kenny Leon.
Disco?
No, but it's still a very moving play. It's not Americana. It's really about human existence. Okay, Shakira.
We told you recently that World Pride is going to take place in Washington, D.C. next spring during June, basically, the Pride Month. And they are going to start it off with a welcoming concert on May 31st in D.C., which will be headlined by Shakira. She has rearranged her world tour so that she can be at World Pride for May 31st to open it up with her concert based on her new music that's come out, an album which I won't attempt to give the Spanish title of, but it translates as Women Don't Cry Anymore, which I think is lovely and may be appropriate for the Kamala Harris administration. But you may remember her from her big hit, Hips Don't Lie.
I saw the new documentary about Martha Stewart, which is in theaters October 25th and on Netflix October 30th. It's called Martha. It's almost brutally honest. It's about the extraordinary rise and fall of America's first self-made billionaire woman who made living a business. And she was an influencer before we had the term. Her long marriage to Andy Stewart is dissected and criticized, her flair for cooking, entertaining, gardening shown. But there's almost too much time spent on her trial and incarceration. That goes on kind of endlessly. And of course, it was ostensibly for not insider training, but lying to the feds in her interview.
Yes.
And for this, she gets 5 months in prison. Who brought all these charges? Do you remember? The execrable James Comey, who went on to destroy Hillary Clinton. He's so sanctimonious, you want to, and it's just outrageous. Anyway, Let's see. You'll also get to see Martha's resurrection. How does she, her business was destroyed. Her $1 billion business was destroyed. How could she come back? She allied
She's
herself.
relentless.
She allied herself with Snoop Dogg.
Yep.
And she speaks.
Well, that's a little more recent, but yes.
She speaks at a roast of Justin Bieber,
yes,
where she does engage in racist and homophobic humor. I mean, it got some laughs, I will tell you.
Well, she's kind of fearless,
and it kind of made her, you know, more regular to a lot of people.
Yes,
and she's a survivor at 83.
Well, she and Snoop were on Andy Cohen's Watch What Happens Live show this week. With her hawking her book. Snoop was sitting in the chair as a guest. Martha was behind the bar, which is not the prime position. But they talked to her, and Andy asked her about Ina Garten, has a new book where she evidently says some unkind things about Martha.
Really?
Yes.
Like what?
I don't know. So... But Andy asked Martha about it and said, you know, what do you think? You know, are you friendly with Ina Garten? What's going on? And Martha says, no, I haven't talked to her for a long time. She dropped me after I went to prison. Come on, Ina, that's very uncharitable.
Yeah.
Lots of people go to prison.
Right. Lots of people get arrested.
Yes, exactly. I was happy to see Barack Obama with Eminem at...
You were?
Yes.
Eminem used to be a great homophobe.
Yeah, but not really. There are people who are and people who aren't, whatever.
Okay. He's repented.
Yeah. Sort
and
of.
so has Al Pacino.
Yes. Al Pacino, as we know, starred in the movie Cruising many, many, many years ago. There he is.
And he's got, the context here is he's out with his new memoir, Sonny Boy.
Yes. And so he apologizes to us for Cruising and says it made him very uncomfortable. He did the movie, even as he read the script, he was uncomfortable with what it did. But he did the movie because, I don't know, it appealed to him in some way, or he committed to it or something.
It was horribly homophobic, and we protested it vociferously.
Yes.
But now, this was made in Greenwich Village. It was like doing Birth of a Nation in Harlem in 1979. So now he says that he donated his entire paycheck, which was huge, to an irrevocable trust for charities. So that
LGBTQ charities.
Did it say LGBTQ charities?
Yeah.
I just saw the word charities. I mean, you know, in those days, well, it's not going to include us. We didn't start until a couple of years later.
Yeah.
Anyway, earlier he had a big fight with Sidney Lumet during the making of Dog Day Afternoon, where he played a hapless gay bank robber based on a true story.
Right, trying to steal money for his trans partner.
Yes. Well, yes, exactly, for a transition, for confirmation surgery.
Yep.
But Lumet wanted to put a Marilyn Monroe drag person in the street cheering him on. And he said, that didn't happen. Why are you doing this? I mean, it's just like, you know. And
why do you think?
Well, I do. Well, anyway.
Yeah. Stick to your TV sets this Sunday night. Somebody Somewhere is returning to HBO. Bridget Everett's great series where she hangs around in her hometown in the Heartland with a bunch of cool characters and partners. This is season 3 of Somebody Somewhere, 10:30 p.m. on HBO.
Out French figure skater Kevin Amaz won the silver at the Skate America competition this past week. We will link in our email to his absolutely, I thought, amazing long program.
It's an excellent program, but we had a little tiff about how gay it was.
Well, I mean, I think to me, it seemed different from past ones, but you said you've been doing this for 50 years.
I was a production assistant at the National Figure Skating Championships in Providence, Rhode Island, in I think 1973. Yes. 51 years ago. And look, they were all the men were gay. Everybody knew they were gay. They just weren't out at the time. A lot of them have come out over the years. So I'm not as, impressed by that. But the routine was spectacular. He was so many really complicated jumps. Really good. And Victoria's Secret held a fashion show last week, I think, and there were a couple of trans models who looked stunning, I must say. We should have included their picture. But that somehow raised a little controversy. I remember when I was in college, even before the figure skating championships, and people would say, not all those models in the fashion shows are women.
Well, when they first did La Cage aux Folles in the early '80s, I mean, there were men and women in the chorus, or they were drag artists. They weren't trans. Maybe some were, but you kind of couldn't tell.
Right.
I mean, who was, and that was the
and
idea.
I don't know whether those models long ago were just in drag in women's fashion shows or whether they were actually trans.
Well, I'm not trying to soften you up about Trump, but of course, back when he ran the Miss Universe contest, he welcomed trans contestants.
Exactly.
I wish that the Democrats would bring that up.
Not to mention Caitlyn Jenner. And we're not going to defend her, but she can use any bathroom she wants. And
she'll defend him.
Yes, but the point is for him to go on and on and on about how he's going to, get rid of trans people is a little much.
Get rid of him by voting and doing everything you can to stop him from becoming president again. And electing Kamala Harris.
I'm also surprised at myself at going to events, but I went to the SAGE annual awards and gala this week, and they did a very good job.
This is for us LGBTQ old people.
Yeah, and they raised a lot of money too for us old people. So, I had a chat there with Brian Sims, the out former legislator in Pennsylvania, and was happy to find out that he's a Gay USA viewer.
Thanks for watching, Brian.
Hi, Brian. So that was nice. And they, as I say, they did a good job.
All right. We have a minute. Shall we run our little video?
Sure.
Okay. I talked to Jerry Nadler at the Disability Pride.
We're going to run out of time.
Go ahead, Jerry.
My message, obviously, is to everyone to get out to vote and make sure everyone does. The future of the country is at stake. We're dealing with an out-and-out fascist who's using out-and-out fascist Mussolini Hitlerite rhetoric, and who, if God forbid elected, will not have the guardrails he did in his first term, and we might not have another free election. So we have to get out and have everybody
and cross our border.
Okay, yes, we have to get out and vote. We have to phone bank. We have to knock on doors. We have to tell our friends. We have to really make a commitment to voting, not get lazy about it and not go. I am very eager for early voting to open in New York this weekend. I will go to my polling place where it will be pretty empty and do early voting.
Great.
And Maren Johns will be here next week with Andy, and I'll be back the week after. We'll see you then.
Have a good time, Ann.